St. Cuthbert's Way, Part 5, 21 miles from Wooler to Lindisfarne. The final 21-mile push to Holy Island crosses Wheatwood Moor and includes visiting St. Cuthbert's Cave and walking the Pilgrim's Trail across the sands to the island. After walking the Southern Upland Way the previous autumn, I said that I would never do another 20-plus mile day, but this just had to be done, and I was sustained by the prospect of reaching the end of my pilgrimage. Leaving Wooler here in heavy rain and looking down towards the town from the trail to Wheatwood Moor. It proceeded to rain all morning, but fortunately it cleared up in the afternoon during my final push towards the island. Wheatwood Moor, Clavering Hill, Larch Cones, St. Cuthbert's Cave. This was an amazing place, and I spent quite a long time there soaking up the ambience. This natural sandstone cave is said to be one of the resting places for the remains of St. Cuthbert on their journey from Lindisfarne to Durham Cathedral in AD 875, when the monks of the monastery fled the Viking invasion. Just 2 miles from Fenwick, in Kyloe Woods, which is an important reserve for red squirrels, and I was gunning for a coffee shop that someone had told me about. However, when I got there, it was closed. What coffee shop worth its salt closes on a Wednesday? Woodruff. Woodruff tea is delicious and acts as a mild sedative. My first sight of the sea and Holy Island. Many trails cross in this area. These include the 120-mile Sandstone Way for mountain bikers, which runs between Berwick-upon-Tweed and Hexham, the 62-mile Northumberland Coast Path from Cresswell to Berwick-upon-Tweed, the 96-mile St. Oswald's Way between Holy Island and the Hadrian's Wall Path at Heavenfield, just to the west of Newcastle, and the New England Coast Path, which runs for 2,795 miles. I have a lot of filling in to do if I'm ever going to complete that one. Crossing the main London to Edinburgh railway line. As I was calling the signalman for the all clear to cross, I was wondering if all the signs and precautions were health and safety gone mad, but actually the trains reach speeds of over 100 miles per hour along this stretch, and there is not a lot of time to see them coming. Yay! Lindisfarne ahoy! My arrival at the causeway coincided nicely with the ebb tide. I sat on a wall and took off my shoes and socks to commence my 2.5-mile pilgrimage across the sands. My American friends arrived at the same time as me, and we set off together, but I quickly fell behind because I hadn't realized how hard it would be for me to walk barefoot without my boots due to the pain in my stiff big toe joints. They almost finished me off. I also had the company of a large group of young Christians from Nashville, Tennessee, who were very entertaining. On my way, by the time I was halfway across, I started to get really cold because, despite wearing all my warm layers, there was a sea breeze, and I couldn't walk as fast as usual to keep warm because every step was pretty painful due to my toe joints. However, although I had expected the water to be freezing, it was actually just lukewarm. Looking back across the causeway from Holy Island. By the time I reached dry land again at Chair Ends, I was a shivering wreck, but the young Christians gave me some wet wipes to dry off my feet before putting my socks and shoes back on. Once I had my shoes on, I was back in the game and easily able to cruise the final half mile into Lindisfarne and the end of the trail. The end of my pilgrimage at Lindisfarne Priory, which was refounded by the Bishop of Durham in 1083, after the original priory, founded by St. Aidan in AD 635, was destroyed by Viking raids during the 8th and 9th centuries. This became one of the most important centres of Christianity in England, and it was where the famous Lindisfarne Gospels were created by Bishop Eadfrith in the early 700s. St. Mary's Church, built between 1180 and 1300 on the site of the monastery founded by St. Aidan in AD 635. It is the oldest building on the island. I went inside and was struck by its beauty and very peaceful atmosphere. View of 16th century Lindisfarne Castle from the priory. The castle was built on a steep outcrop of the Windsill in 1549 to 1550 and subsequently altered considerably by the English architect Sir Edwin Lutyens in 901. The castle was closed while I was on the island, so I didn't get to visit it on this occasion. However, my son Alex and I visited it after his graduation from the University of Edinburgh in 2001. For years we have been driving past it on our constant journeying back and forth to Edinburgh, and we kept promising ourselves that we would visit, but the tides never seemed to coincide with our schedule. Finally, in 2001, we realised that the time was right, and our visit was almost like a reward for all Alex's hard years of study. Lindisfarne Castle, which sits on top of an ancient volcanic mound, is a powerhouse of magical energy. We almost didn't pay the extortionate entrance fee charged to actually go inside the castle, but we are glad we did, because it quickly became evident that the energy there was very special. We both felt it swirl around us as we stood on the ramparts looking out across the island. It is obviously not called Holy Island for nothing. The interesting thing is that we didn't get the same feeling at the much heralded ruins of the nearby priory. Lessons learnt. Everything about St. Cuthbert's Way is beautiful and magical. Walking across causeways is more challenging than I would ever have thought possible. I love pilgrimage trails. I was amazed to discover that I have now, almost inadvertently, walked 10 different pilgrimage trails in Britain, and they have all been extremely rewarding. These are, in the order that I walked them, as follows: the Ridgeway, the Pilgrim's Trail, the Cumbrian Cistercian Way, the Peddar's Way, the Great Stones Way, the John Bunyan Trail, the North Downs Way, the St. Swithin's Way, St. Cuthbert's Way, and the London to Walsingham Camino. Pilgrimage seems to be undergoing a huge revival at the present time as people seek to immerse themselves in this ancient practice in order to help them to deal with the challenges posed by modern life. There are over 48 major pilgrimage trails in Britain, and the British Pilgrimage Trust has a collection of more than 250 pilgrimage routes and sacred places in Britain. For more details about my St. Cuthbert's Way pilgrimage, please see the other videos in this series. Parts 1 to 4.